as we embark on this exercise, let's see what we're going to expect at the completion of this exercise. So you will see the chat client application starting with a list of contacts. So this is the first activity that you will encounter when you start the application. So you have a list of contacts, and when you click on any one of those contacts, then you will be taken to a second activity where you'll have the chat window open for you and enable you to type in your messages. So if you type in say hi and click on and you can see the continuation of a typical chat conversation between two users. Now, to get to the stage, we have to modify the chat client application that we developed in the previous exercise with a lot more details. Now, this involves adding colors, so you can see that the user interface now reflects a little bit more vibrant color scheme. You can see the use of image buttons on the screen. You can also see that we have two different activities and transitioning from one activity to another activity and so on. And you will see some elements of material design being used in this application. So let's go ahead and see how we get to this point, starting with the project setup code that we provide for you first. To get you started on this exercise, first download the pre-configured chat client colors.zip file that we have provided to you on the course website, and then import the project into Android Studio. So once you have that in Android Studio, you will see that we have already configured many parts of the project. Now, making you go through the entire project development will be very time consuming, so we will concentrate on certain aspects of the project that you will do hands-on, and then I will illustrate certain other aspects of the project by pointing out those parts within the project hierarchy that you need to visit to understand better. So let's see where we'll begin this journey. First and foremost, I want you to understand how we can make an application compatible for different platforms. So far, we have been developing applications primarily targeting platform 21 and 22, which is Lollipop platform. How do we make this applications compatible with earlier versions of Android? Now, this chat client colors application is configured such that it is compatible all the way down to Jelly Bean. Now, we can easily take this approach to make it compatible all the way down to, say, Gingerbread or lower. The code itself doesn't change, but for the sake of carrying out automated tests, I had to restrict myself to the minimum SDK being Jelly Bean. So what are some of the things that we need to do in order to enable backward compatibility? Now, fortunately, Android platform developers frequently release what they call as compatibility libraries, which backport some of the features from the new Android platforms to be made available in the older platforms. So for example, the support for material design has already been backported, or some aspects of material design have been backported and supported on earlier versions of Android. So you can go ahead and deploy some of those features. So we will make use of some of the material design aspects when we develop this application. First, let's see how we do the backporting. Now, when you start a new project, if you set your minimum SDK to a lower value, Android Studio will automatically configure some of these things for you. But just to give you an idea, if you don't follow this completely, it's okay. We can still go on doing the project and understand the remaining parts. First and foremost, Android Studio uses something called Gradle for building your projects. Now, and one of the files that you might encounter if you open is called as the build.gradle file. In the build.gradle file, there are certain configurations that we can put in order for our application to work correctly. Now, let me focus you down to a couple of things within this Gradle file. Now, don't confuse yourself with the entire Gradle file. It's right now quite complex for me to explain every aspect of it. But let me focus you down to a couple of statements down below here in this section called dependencies. So you will see that I have included something called compile com.android.support.appcompact version 22.1.1. The reason for this is the appcompat libraries enable backporting of some of those features to the earlier Android platforms. You can also already see that I have used the recycler view library importer. So this is how you would import libraries, support libraries into Android application configurations so that you can make use of those features. Now, this, as far as possible, let Android Studio configure this for you. If you need to learn, there is sufficient documentation on the developer's website on how to do how to make use of the support libraries and so on. From our perspective, this is sufficient enough for you to understand. The second point that you would notice is that our activities are going to be now using something called the app compact activity. The app compact activity is a derived activity from the activity class and configured in such a way that you can use the features from the support library for the earlier versions of Android. So that's why we will be extending the app compact activity here rather than plain activity. So far, we have always been extending the activity class. So that's one other feature that you should notice about the use of compatibility libraries. Our next examination is the use of colors and styles to add vibrancy to the user interface. So for this, we will look at how we can provide resources for adding colors and styles to our application. To do that, let's visit a couple of XML files under the values folder. The first and foremost is colors.xml. Here I have defined 5 different color values that I'm going to make use of within the application. So you can see the colors being defined here. So these are all from Android's perspective. These are all resources, and these colors are defined in terms of the RGB values here. We are going to make use of these colors when we construct the user interface. So spend a little time looking at these colors, and also on the left side you can see small patches to indicate to you what the colors will actually look like on the device's screen. The second part is how we make use of those colors to create styles. So this is where one part of material design comes into the picture. Styles in material design can be enclosed inside this another file called styles.xml, and here we define various styles and then make use of the color schemes that we have defined earlier. We can also define fonts and other aspects for a style. So in here I'm making use of a style which I call as app theme, and this theme is the theme that I'm going to apply to all the UIs that I'm using within this application. Now here I will make use of three different colors here. So this is the material design's way of specifying colors for various aspects. Now, later on, I will explain to you how these are actually used in stylizing the toolbar and the status bar and other aspects of the user interface. Spend a little time having a look at how we make use of the colors within this style. The third aspect that you're going to examine here is the use of something called drawables. Drawables are again resources that you're going to provide for your application to make use of in the design of the user interface. Some drawables that you will actually make use of are images that can be used in the construction of user interface. So for our chat client application, we make use of the send button, which is using a image there. So these images are imported into our project. Now, when you define images for Android, you have to remember that Android devices have a variety of screen densities, and so when you supply images for use within your Android application, you need to ensure that you supply images that can be used for several different screen densities. Now, in Android's terms, these are classified under several categories, starting all the way from XXX DPI, XX DPI, XDPI, HDPI, MDPI, and also LDPI. So these, starting from XXX DPI down to LDPI, refer to the screen densities. Obviously, the higher end being the screens that have very high pixel density. So that's the reason for the use of the acronym DPI. You need to supply your image at different resolutions, targeting each of these different DPI values. So you will be supplying exactly the same image, but at 5 different pixel density values. Okay, so this is what you will see included in the drawables folder. So you can see that I have included 5 different PNG files, all with exactly the same name, with the different pixel densities here. Now, I didn't target LDPI because we don't see that often being used in devices anymore. So now, by specifying your image at different pixel densities, Android will automatically configure the user interface to use the right image for the device's pixel density. So for example, if you have a very high density screen for your device, then it'll automatically default to using images with high pixel density, and for lower end devices it'll default to an appropriate lower pixel density. So this way your screen will not look distorted when you target devices with different pixel densities. So that's one other feature. Again, this is explained in detail on the Android developers website. I just wanted to draw your attention to that fact here. Now, in addition, we make use of drawables that we can actually define in XML code within our application. Now, in this example, we will make use of 2 different drawables here. Let me open one of them and then show you. This is called as a shape drawable. And in the shape drawable, I have configured this shape to be a rectangle and of one single solid color. And the rectangle with rounded corners. Now, the reason why I do this is that when you display your messages, I want the messages to be highlighted with some background color. So that is where the shape drawable that I just defined is used in practice. In a short while, I will show you how we can make use of these shape drawables to define our messages. We will examine this in a little more detail when we come to the theoretical foundations for this exercise. Now, let me show you how I can make use of these drawables within my user interface definition. So we saw from the earlier chat client that we have the message.xml and mymessage.xml files. So you see the message.xml file, which is two text views inside a linear layout. So let me go ahead and select that linear layout. And then for this linear layout, I will set the background color to be drawable / bg message left. When I do that, you can immediately notice that this particular message linear layout is now enclosed inside a colored rounded rectangle. So this is how we make use of a shape drawable to define certain properties for our UI widgets that we are using or layouts that we are using within our user interface. Let's go ahead and do the same thing to mymessage.xml. Again, selecting the linear layout, I'm going to apply the other color for this background. So I would say drawable / bg underscore message right. We have already defined this XML file in the drawable folder. So now you can see how I managed to add background color to the two different messages so that they are a lot more clearly visible on the screen. So this is the use of drawables on your user interface.